go time. Good morning, everyone, or you can drop the slides. Great, thank you. Well, good to see everybody. Good morning. I'm Katie Luvis, Vice President of External Affairs at the Chamber for Greater Chapel Hill-Carrboro. It's my pleasure to welcome you this morning to the Legislative Forum. This forum is the 8th and final forum in our 2021 Critical Issues series. These forums connect thinking leaders with leading thinkers. Today, we're getting the state of play on state and federal legislative affairs. We have 4 special guest speakers who will share their reflections and their predictions with the U.S. Congress and the North Carolina General Assembly, and they'll share some updates on issues that matter to our local business community. Before we get the program started, a few housekeeping items. First, as far as staffing for today's Zoom discussion, I'll serve as your host. Our Chamber President and CEO, Aaron Nelson, will moderate the discussion. And I have 2 colleagues, Mackenzie Reinhold and Ori St. Germain. They're on technology, and they'll address any potential hacking issues for us today. Throughout the forum, please post your questions or comments in the chat below. I'll monitor that and help tee up your comments during our Q&A periods. Today's forum will be recorded, and we're going to share that recording through our YouTube channel, and we'll send you a link in the follow-up email in the next day or so after the event. This forum, like many of our forums, is free for Chamber members. So if you're not a Chamber member yet, but you're interested in learning more, please drop a note in the chat, and I'll make sure we follow up with you. Today's forum and the entire 2021 Critical Issues series is coordinated by the Chamber's Government Affairs Committee. The committee has about 24 volunteers who meet monthly to help inform and shape our Chamber's policy positions and advocacy. Their work is guided by our policy platform, which focuses on accelerating economic and workforce development and improving the regulatory environment and local infrastructure. If you're interested in serving on this committee, we're actually accepting nominations now for the 2022 slate. So reach out to me and let me know, and I'll talk to you more about the roles and responsibilities. Now, today's forum would not be possible without our presenting sponsor, Servpro of South Durham and Orange County, and our 2021 Critical Issues Series sponsors, Duke Energy, Durham Tech, and Chapel Hill Media Group. I'm going to invite each sponsor to bring a quick welcome. First, Servpro. Servpro is a locally owned and operated business that provides commercial and residential fire and water cleanup and restoration services, as well as biohazard, trauma, and mold remediation services. They're there when you need them 24/7 with their emergency services. They're fast, highly trained, and they use advanced technology tools and equipment. With us today is Servpro's Business Development Representative, Jim Mcneely. Jim, we're so glad to have you with us. Please bring welcome.
I'd like to thank each and every participant on this call on today. It is truly an honor to be able to sponsor such a great event. The local officials, we thank you for your hard work. We thank you for your dedication to the community, and looking forward to the growth in the community. So welcome.
Thanks, Jim. Great to see you. All right, next up, Duke Energy. Duke Energy provides power to nearly 10 million customers across half a dozen states. They are one of the world's most admired companies by Fortune magazine and one of America's best employers by Forbes. And they're working hard to build a smarter energy future. We appreciate their support of these thoughtful forums. And with us today is Duke Energy's Director of the East Region, Indira Everett. Indira, wonderful to see you. Please bring welcome.
Good morning. Wonderful to see you too, Katie. As you mentioned, I'm Indira Everett, and I'm delighted to welcome each of you to today's legislative forum. Duke Energy is a proud sponsor, and I greatly look forward to hearing from our 3 state legislators and congressmen. Duke Energy is fully focused on delivering a cleaner energy future for North Carolina. And on behalf of Duke Energy and all of our customers, I want to thank you, Senator Foushee, Representative Insko, and Representative Meyer for being among those who voted for the final clean energy legislation, House Bill 951. This bill advanced landmark legislation, and with the encouragement of chambers like yours and other voices all across the state, legislation received overwhelming bipartisanship support. I'd also like to thank Congressman Price for your support of the recent infrastructure bill. From modernizing the grid to investing in hydrogen and advanced nuclear technologies, federal support is absolutely essential as the country's energy landscape rapidly changes. I thank each of you for your role in accelerating a clean energy transition and for charting a path forward that supports communities and maintains affordable rates while ensuring the reliable service and economic competitiveness we all depend on. So thanks again for this opportunity and happy holidays to you all.
Thanks, Indira. Well done. Next up, Durham Tech. Durham Tech is the community college that serves our workforce needs here in Orange County. They have a beautiful 20-acre campus centrally located in Orange County near Hillsborough, as well as multiple campuses throughout Durham County. With us today is Durham Tech President, JB Buxton. JB, good to see you. Please bring welcome.
Katie, good to see you. Good morning. And we are proud to be sponsors of this forum and also proud to be part of recognizing this group of elected officials. I just want to say to Representatives Insko and Meyer and Senator Foushee, thank you for the work you did to make sure the final budget bill supported our community college faculty and staff with a first step to getting them to the national average in salary. Appreciate what you did to buffer some of the enrollment declines we've seen with some budget stabilization and much needed investments in equipment and our facilities. You've been major champions of the college and we appreciate it. Representative Insko, a little hard to see you retire. For I think 20 years I've been working with you on early childhood and education issues and appreciate the staunch leadership you provided. Representative Meyer, Senator Foushee, very happy to see you continuing to look to serve in the public arena and especially to serve an area that will be covered by this college. We appreciate your leadership very much. Congressman Price, similar to Representative Insko for Durham Tech, very hard to see this decision for our community. As I've told some people as a Chapel Hill grad, I feel like a Congress without Representative Price is kind of Carolina without Dean Smith, maybe Duke without Coach K, Representative Price. I'll give you that Duke reference. But for years, you have been a stalwart supporter of this college in this region, including in what we hope will be an important community project that we're looking to do with Wake Tech to support life sciences in the region. And you provided key leadership to make that happen. So thank you to the four of you for your incredible leadership in our community and what you've meant for our students, especially.
Thanks, JB. We love Durham Tech. Well done. We also appreciate our fourth and final sponsor today, Chapel Hill Media Group. So we encourage you all to tune into 97.9 The Hill WCHL, your local radio station, and visit chapelboro.com, your daily local news source. All right, now onto the program. As I mentioned before, the Chamber President and CEO, Aaron Nelson, will moderate our discussion today. Aaron has led the Chamber for more than 20 years. He's a Carolina grad, and a fun fact, speaking of politics today, Aaron was our student body president at UNC. Aaron, take it away.
Hey, I appreciate your highlighting my final and last election. Great to see you all here today. Katie, thank you for the warm welcomes and introductions. Thank you to our sponsors for helping underwrite this. Y'all, we have a strong forum planned for you guys. Today, we're going to break it into two sections. Section 1 is going to be federal issues and segment 2 on state issues. You're welcome to drop things into the chat if you have questions, but we're going to have an opportunity for live Q&A if it all goes like it's supposed to. So in segment 1, we're going to receive an update from Representative David Price, and we hope for some time for Q&A there. At segment 2, we're going to have a panel conversation with representatives to the General Assembly that represent us, Senator Foushee, Representatives Insko and Meyer, and again, time at the end for Q&A. My goal for us today is to get timely updates, some reflections about what's going on in our General Assembly and in the Congress, as well as some predictions on where we are headed, touching on some of the key issues that are important to our community. So let's get started, and I'm going to introduce our first speaker. This is the Honorable David Price. David Price has represented our community in Congress since 1987. During that time, he has distinguished himself as a strong supporter of education, accessible healthcare, affordable housing, clean air, clean water, scientific research, transit and transportation. From educator to congressman, As many of you all know, he started his career as a political science professor at Duke University. He has a PhD in political science and a divinity degree from Yale. He has 4 books on Congress. So if you miss him after he retires from Congress, you can cozy up to him by grabbing a copy and reading his words at a later time. For more than 30 years in public service, he has served in lots of different roles in Congress. He and his wife, Lisa, they live locally. They attend Binkley Memorial Baptist Church, where he taught Sunday school and chaired the board. Okay, that's the introduction. Now, please join me in welcoming Representative David Price. Congressman, it is really good to see you. For 20 years, you have come and joined us for these conversations with our members, the first time in this format, but we're hoping that you could share with us and update some of your reflections on what's going on in Congress. Welcome.
All right, thank you. I'm very, very glad to be here, Aaron, and you've put in a few years yourself, and we've worked together on this event and many other things, and I value your service. You've built the chamber. You and your colleagues have built the chamber into a formidable organization that plays a major role in the community, and I know how important that is, knowing something about how chambers operate more generally, and I know how unique the Chapel Hill-Carrboro Chamber is. Glad to see, let's see, I see the mayor, I see our senator, I see lots of people on this call. I apologize for dashing here at the last minute. We have some barriers in the way between my apartment and here because Bob Dole is lying in state here today. And I hadn't quite counted on having to circumvent those barriers in getting to the office here, but looks like we made it, and I'll proceed, and of course be interested in what my colleagues, other elected officials, have to say. I've been asked in the space of about 10 or 12 minutes to give an overview of the federal scene. That's a tall order if you consider the many policies that are turning around, plus the politics of it all, and I won't presume to give a comprehensive view. I will give a few highlights, and then whatever time you all have for questions and comments, I'd be happy to receive those. I do appreciate the kind words about my not seeking re-election. It's been a good, long, fulfilling term of service. I said when I announced my retirement that the one thing I would not be saying is that I had achieved a sense of closure, because and I think what I say this morning will give you a sense of that, because this work is never done. And in particular, we have challenges at this moment, not just to building infrastructure and investing in our people and the kinds of things that we know have been so long deferred. But we also have challenges, basic challenges to our democracy, to the rule of law, to the peaceful transition of power, things that we didn't think we would be having to worry about as Americans. But the legacy of the last 4 years is a frightful one. The prospect is uncertain. And so I think people who are patriots, friends of democracy, supporters of what this country has stood for, have a lot to not just worry about. Let's get beyond worrying about it and work on it, and make sure that our politics and our policies live up to what this country aspires to. I'm going to concentrate just briefly on 4 major items. None of them will surprise you. They're all very, very important, and they're particularly important to the business community and to the economy. That's the way I've chosen what to focus on today, to try to concentrate on those items. The first is the initial initiative of the Biden-Harris administration. It did build on the CARES Act and other pandemic measures that went before, but it also brought to a conclusion some very frustrating efforts to extend that pandemic-related assistance. So the American Rescue Plan early in this year carried forward those relief efforts and have had a great effect. I co-chair a group that meets on Wednesday mornings and discusses the economy and the budget. And items of that sort. And our guest yesterday, Mark Zandi, leading economist, said that this, when you look historically, this is one of the more successful efforts, our policy efforts here to take this economy through the pandemic. The pandemic has had a frightful toll in many ways, but the predicted economic crash, the enduring economic crash, has not come, and that's partly because of the CARES Act. We then struggled to pass the HEROES Act. We finally passed the rescue plan, and the money now is flowing from that plan. It has been flowing both to individuals who have been kind of carried through by this, but also to people who are threatened by eviction, and small businesses, of course, that very much needed another lease on life to get them through the pandemic. Small businesses, in fact, have been at the heart of the relief effort. As many of you know, I'm sure many of on this call took advantage of the PPP plan, and that has had a major effect across the country. The second item is one that just came to conclusion, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. Sometimes we call it BIF. I'm very, very pleased to note that infrastructure is no longer a platitude or just a punchline. You know, we had come to make jokes about Infrastructure Week because we kept having Infrastructure Week and nothing came of it. That was the story of our life in the last 4 years. Now we have a quite remarkable bipartisan agreement that is going to invest in all modes of transportation and also has an expansive view of infrastructure, not quite expansive enough, in my opinion. For example, it didn't reach housing and community development, but it did reach broadband, and it did reach water and sewer development, and it did reach the electric grid, as well as all modes of transportation. I would note, particularly with respect to the Triangle and our part of North Carolina, that there's some money here that we have simply got to take advantage of. Some of it comes by formula. So we will be able, for example, to hopefully accelerate or certainly avoid further delays in the state TIP, the highway plan. But in terms of money we can apply for, we have an opportunity now we must seize to get that Southeast Rail corridor nailed down. We have a good cooperation with the state of Virginia. We have had a so-called Chrissy grant, which we were able to maneuver earlier. So now Virginia and North Carolina have jointly purchased that right away, Raleigh to Richmond, from CSX. And the next step is to develop that and to have high-speed train travel, high-quality train travel from Charlotte to Washington. This is a corridor that this is ideal for this kind of development, and I'm hopeful this money will help us do it. And the same applies for transit. We have many transit needs in the Triangle. We have had some false starts in our transit program in the Triangle. Everybody knows that. But I don't want to have another false start. And I'm encouraged that the BRT, the Bus Rapid Transit plans for MLK Boulevard are proceeding with every prospect of federal funding for that. And I hope that Orange County and Chapel Hill will be full participants, full supporters of the regional rail, the commuter rail across the spine of the Triangle region. So transit and intercity rail are big items in that infrastructure plan, as well as broadband. People think broadband is a problem in rural America. Well, they should visit our friends in Northern Orange County. I mean, I guess that's rural America, but it's awfully close into the Triangle. People would not think we would have the kind of broadband issues we have in Northern Orange or Northern Durham counties, but we do. You all know that, and you know how frustrating it's been to try to get this together. I do believe this influx of funding and the initiative that's going to come with it, the programmatic initiative that's going to come with it, will help us get hold of that problem sooner rather than later. There's also an airport investment, I meant to say, in the infrastructure plan, which is music to our ears, knowing that we simply must have a new runway out at RDU. All right, item number 3, and this is the one I have the most direct role in, and that is the fiscal 22 appropriations. In fact, that really needs to be seen right along these other things as a key aspect of the Biden administration's proposals. Annual appropriations, that's as basic as it gets. And I'm chairing the Transportation and HUD Subcommittee of Appropriations. I'm happy to report that we have a bill for fiscal 22 that is a very, very good down payment on what I've been talking about, both in the transportation and in the housing areas. We trace through our bill themes of economic and racial equity. For example, correcting policies in the past, the redlining policies of the past. The policies in the past for a transportation policy has bisected communities. Look at Durham, North Carolina for Exhibit A. Look at Winston-Salem. You know, there's explicit money for rectifying some of those past injustices. And in the bill, we have robust funding for every mode of transportation. We have a good dose of funding, although we need more for repairing and renovating public housing. I have been able to make my signature issue on that committee, bringing back into play elderly housing. You all know about Mcneely Estates. You know about Covenant Place there in Chapel Hill. We need more of that. We need congregations and nonprofits once again engaging in the production of housing, quality housing for the elderly, for the disabled. There is now once again money to do that, and what all of us on this call ought to be thinking about is applying for that money, encouraging organizations to go after that funding because it is available now, and it is going to be available in greater quantities because of this legislation. The Tiger grants I still call it that. It's now called BUILD, but it's the program that built Raleigh's Union Station, and that can build more in the way of path-breaking, multimodal transportation facilities. We're under a continuing resolution right now. I wish I could tell you that this appropriations bill had been enacted, but alas, it has fallen victim for the moment to the failure of the Senate to act. But and we had hoped by now that the continuing resolution could be replaced by a full year omnibus appropriations bill. That has not happened. It will happen, I believe, into the new year a bit, but we need to keep pressing on that. And the stakeholders around the country, including the chambers of commerce, need to keep pressing on that. It is not acceptable to have a year-long continuing resolution within the confines of the Trump budget. That is simply unacceptable. It should be unacceptable to Republicans as well as Democrats. And I'm going to push as hard as I can to get our bill on the books so that we take advantage of some of these provisions. And then finally, number 4, Build Back Better. That's the one that is a more expensive definition of infrastructure, the human infrastructure. That's where we have some really good housing provisions to in a non-incremental way. This goes beyond the year-to-year funding. This is a generational investment. The idea is to get that public housing stock. It's disgracefully deteriorated. And you know, when you have carbon monoxide poisoning over in McDougal Terrace, you can be sure that is the tip of the iceberg. That is unacceptable, and there's a lot more trouble where that came from. We have tens of billions of dollars in deferred maintenance in public housing. So there's money in Build Back Better to take a good whack at that. Also to put more vouchers on the street, but not just more vouchers on the street, also to build more housing. There's money in that bill to incentivize the construction of low-income housing for people who are just getting into the housing market and those who need some support. Only 1 out of 4 people who should have rental assistance are getting it, and that's not acceptable when people are paying 60-70% of their income in rent. That is not sustainable. There's also some good incentives in here for home ownership. Any of this I can talk more about, but I'm just going quickly over it right now. The Build Back Better bill is also the where the child tax credit is. That's a game changer in terms of child poverty in this country. There is major support for child care services and also then for pre-K education. and making that universal or close to universal in this country. There is money there for elder care, for the elder care infrastructure. Not all of this is part of an expansive definition of infrastructure that involves investing in our people. And so you all know the story. I won't go into the politics of this, but you know that this bill is now subject to the tender mercies of a Senate that is evenly divided. But it has been pre-negotiated. 95% of it has been pre-negotiated between the House and Senate. So the bill that has gone over from the House is almost there. And it's important that it be driven home, hopefully before the end of the year. And certainly not long after that, because this Build Back Better bill is the critical fourth piece of this four-legged stool, you might say. That's the best I can do for a bird's eye view, but thank you. And hope this is helpful and helps you sort out the different elements of these initiatives. And I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you, Representative Price. We understand you have a hard stop at 9 and a meeting that actually starts at 9 that you'll be late to as you scoot over.
Actually, that meeting has just been canceled because of the Bob Dole services. So I'm good to stick with you for a while.
Well, I'm glad that you are here with us. I do see one question in the chat, but let me first, you talked a little bit about the politics and the process. I must say from here, it looks like an absolute mess. And you've been there a long time, and I've heard you say it's never been worse. But do you have any optimism or any thoughts about what it will take in order for improved cooperation and getting things done on behalf of y'all's constituents?
Yeah, I think maybe it's evident from what I just said or the way I said it that I'm not by any means hopeless about this. The process is a mess, and in the sense of being very polarized, very partisan in needless ways. I mean, I was on the House floor last night until 10 o'clock, and what was I doing? I was there because Marjorie Taylor Greene, I guess you know that name, one of the more interesting new members here. Marjorie Taylor Greene and some of her colleagues insisted that we have roll call votes on every measure before us. So we sat on the House floor, totally wasting our time for 4 hours, voting on 31 measures, a roll call on each of 31 measures. We were gnashing our teeth, and a lot of Republicans were as well, but they don't do anything about it. So that's a little snapshot of life in the House these days. And I'm not asking for sympathy. We need to fix it, but it is very, very hard to fix it when the opposition party has gone off so far in the direction they have, and they can't control themselves. They can't control some of their own members. So anyway, yes, it's bad, but it's not hopeless. And what I just said indicates that. I think we managed with Democratic votes alone to get the rescue plan done early this year. And that was with an even division in the Senate and a 3-vote margin in the House. But we got that done with Democratic votes alone. Remarkably quickly, actually, when you think about it. And that's a $2 trillion bill, the rescue plan. And in most situations, that would be considered a good year's work. Secondly, we have moved these appropriations bills along, and I do think we will get an omnibus bill, but it's worrisome that we did not get it this month. But anyway, we put that bill together cooperatively. My Republican partner and I cooperated very, very, very well to get that transportation and HUD bill together. And so that's not a hopeless situation either, though although it's a struggle. Appropriations has a history of a more bipartisan way of operating. Trouble is we get incoming fire from the partisan wars more generally, and can't always sustain our efforts. Thirdly, we finally got this bipartisan infrastructure bill done. I think that's a remarkable victory. I give Biden personally a lot of credit for that. And there's a lot in that bill. I know it wasn't everything everybody wanted, but I'd say it's a pretty good bill, and I'm proud of it. And then the Build Back Better is the real challenge right now. And that's a challenge, of course, for Democrats to somehow get all of our ducks in a row and get this done. So no, I'm not hopeless, but you do have to struggle every day.
Well, I appreciate a sense of optimism on that. In this region, we often refer to our local economy as ED, med, and bed, right? Meaning that our dominant industries are education, our universities, Duke, UNC, Central, Durham Tech, healthcare on that med side, and then on the beds or tourism and hospitality, restaurants. From your national perspective, what do you see as our community's best assets or competitive advantages? And then what do you think threaten us that we need to be paying attention to?
Well, that's a pretty good summary. I mean, that really does highlight the strengths of the area and the things we need to cultivate. I'm reminded of it every day. I'm not on the committees of jurisdiction of healthcare, but I have a staff person who spends full time on healthcare just because we are so centrally involved in that, and it is so critical. We have a steady stream of people wanting to talk about healthcare policy, and the same is true for these other areas. I guess I'll kind of translate your question to mean what's the biggest stake right now in federal policy. There are other things I didn't even mention, but the Higher Education Act is up for reauthorization. There are a number of things we could talk about in each of those areas. I'll just stress for a minute healthcare, maybe, because I did not say a word about that, and I probably should have, because in the Build Back Better bill, there are healthcare measures that really would be extremely important to our community and to the state. You know, we're a very hard-headed state in terms of expanding Medicaid. You all know that. It's absolutely disgraceful to be part of the 13 holdouts, the states that have refused to take advantage of that virtually costless aspect of the Affordable Care Act to extend healthcare to 500,000 people. I mean, you shake your head at that hard-headedness. And so there is in the Build Back Better bill a provision which would extend coverage to those people. It isn't exactly compelling the state to expand Medicaid. I don't want to misrepresent it, but it would achieve the same thing. So don't underestimate that for a moment. In fact, that might be for North Carolina the single most important aspect of Build Back Better. There is also an extension of more favorable terms for the Affordable Care Act, more eligibility, a better subsidy. That's important as well for the people just above the Medicaid income level. And then, as I said, there's a lot of support for the home care infrastructure, which increasingly people depend on. So I've already mentioned some of the transportation stakes that our region has in this bill, particularly regarding transit and rail and aviation and so on. So there's plenty here for us. Don't doubt it for a moment.
I have three questions that have been typed in the chat from some of your constituents. First one comes from Desiree Goldman. She says, in the past, there has been a debate about utilities such as cell towers and broadband, about whether they should be on private land versus public land. Do you have anything to say about that? Also, private sewer systems versus public sewer systems. Is that an issue that you are familiar with or have a comment on?
I honestly don't know about private sewer systems. Maybe somebody can explain that.
Well, let's do the utility side from broadband and cell towers, the public land, private land question.
You know, I don't have a generic answer on that. I'm I'm well aware of the disputes. I'm also well aware that the disputes aren't usually resolved at the federal level. They would be a question of local zoning and local land use and working out the politics of these location issues locally. My guess would be that in terms of the federal money, that there would be a good deal of latitude left for different arrangements at the state level and the local level with regards to how these towers are sited. You know, there is a public good here, and there is some threat to private land interests, and those have to be resolved in many of the issues we're talking about here, public facilities issues as well as broadband. So I don't have a generic answer for that. I, like all of you probably, I don't we've got to get broadband expanded. We simply have to. The pandemic has underscored that. But the future of healthcare, the future of locating small businesses, the future of education for our kids. I mean, it's not acceptable to have kids going to McDonald's to do their homework. And that's happening in our county.
Right.
Okay, that's not just off in remote North Carolina. And so there's going to have to be some accommodation made for getting broadband expanded. And one would hope for a cooperative and sensible attitude so that we can get that done.
We'll ask you for 3 more minutes, and I've got 2 questions. Joe Malazzo, as you know, Executive Director of the Regional Transportation Alliance, he asks, are there any federal opportunities to support the bus rapid transit project on Martin Luther King in addition to the Small Starts program? And then Raleigh's first BRT construction set starts next year, looking to see what we can do to accelerate bus rapid transit in the Western Triangle.
Right. Well, yes, the Small Starts is the vehicle, though. I mean, both. I am very optimistic. There's already very positive signs with both the Newbern Avenue BRT extension in Raleigh. That's the first of 4 spokes that are going to go out from Central Raleigh to Wake County. The Newbern Avenue is the one that's farthest along. And then comparable to that is the project out MLK Boulevard in Chapel Hill, presumably from Southern Village eventually to Chapel Hill North and beyond. That's an ideal route, I think, for BRT. BRT is a solution that has some distinct advantages and some distinct limitations. But I believe that the plans are sound for both of those projects, and the small start as opposed to new starts. This is lingo for Federal Transit Administration grants, but I fully support the decision to go separately for that money and to not wait for it to be part of a comprehensive regional plan. And the small starts structure, the way those grants work, lets us do that. And I've fully supported those and will continue to do that. It is not a total solution. There really needs to be, I think, a commuter rail system across the spine of the triangle, utilizing the existing roadbed and connecting to conventional bus and BRT lines at critical points, including Union Station. I mean, one reason we got that series of Tiger grants for Union Station was not just intercity rail, but also because of the bus station next door that was going to connect to bus and have a kind of interconnectivity for Wake County. So yes, whether there might be some additional money lying around that we could apply for in kind of creative ways, I'm always up for that. But I think the main vehicle is going to be the Small Start program.
I appreciate your time with us today. There was a question from Scotty Sewell. It doesn't feel like a short one though, Scotty, and we're going to need to, she was talking about the importance of early childhood education and Build Back Better and the specific needs of universal pre-K in our district here. If you have 30 seconds of comment in response to that statement, and then we're going to move to our next segment.
I think it's extremely important part of Build Back Better. And I really think we will get this done. I mean, there's been, all of you know about the discussions with Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin and back and forth about this. And of course, you got to have those discussions because there's not one Republican senator who's willing to vote for this, not one. So we got to have all 50 hands on deck, and that's a tall order, you know. But I have not heard a word of dissent on universal pre-K or on childcare, at least not from those guys. I really think we have strong support for that, and the childcare thing especially. For years, childcare has been underemphasized, I think, as a component of our overall economic picture. But the pandemic, you can't ignore any longer. I'm talking about this discussion we had yesterday morning about the economy and and housing. The aspect of getting people back to work and what it's going to take to do that. You know, childcare looms very large there, but it's been a problem for a long time.
We appreciate
that we were caught in this bind here that we can't afford childcare, but yet childcare can't pay their workers enough. I mean, the economy,
and some people can't go to work
economics doesn't
without.
add up. So yes, we got to get it done.
Well, we appreciate you. Representative Price, if we were in person, there would be a lengthy applause and standing ovation for your length of service. If we all stood and did that now, you'd have these awkward camera views of our midsections. So I think instead, our best is if folks would drop into the chat our notes of appreciation and congratulations and incredible service to our region and our community. I personally am so grateful for you and your leadership on behalf of our businesses and our members and our community, our region. Tremendous service, and we are so very grateful for you. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Aaron. And I'd like to stay on as long as I can to hear.
Well, we'd love to have you as long as you're able. We are going to pivot to section 2. So I'm going to begin with a proper introduction for the 3 of our next speakers. I'll hit all 3 of them, and then we'll put them in a panel format to have a conversation about what's going on at the General Assembly. First is the Honorable Valerie P. Foushee, who serves as the state senator for District 23. Y'all, that is Chatham and Orange counties. If you're not keeping up with the legislative districts, you're not the only one. If you Google North Carolina legislative districts, you'll have to do a time check and a date check because there are so many maps out there, it's uncertain who's who. But at the moment, Chatham and Orange counties in the North Carolina Senate. She's a lifelong resident of Orange County, a graduate of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, a former employee of the police department in Chapel Hill, where she supervised 2 units and administered an $11 million budget. She was first elected to the General Assembly in 2012 after serving 6 years on the Orange County Board of Commissioners, where she served as chair, and during that time also served on our Chamber of Commerce's Board of Directors. In the General Assembly, she's been an advocate for bipartisan reform of education funding and policies to ensure transparency and appropriate funding for all of our school districts. Senator Foushee, we are very glad to have you with us. Welcome. We'll invite you to speak and address us in just a second. From our the House of Representatives, in our General Assembly representing the State House, we have the Honorable Verla Insko. She represents District 56, that is Orange County. She has a master's in public administration. She's a former healthcare administrator at the UNC School of Medicine. She was first elected to the General Assembly in 1997, now in her 13th term. It makes her, we believe, the longest serving stateswoman in the General Assembly. She credits her parents, both products of the Great Depression and in the Midwest, for greatly influencing her life and her political philosophy and inspiring her lifelong commitment to public service. We are grateful to have you with us, Representative Insko. Third is the Honorable Graig R Meyer, who serves in the state in District 50, that is Caswell and some of Orange County in the House of Representatives. He is a trained social worker with more than 20 years of experience serving in our public schools and serving students. First as a coordinator of the Blue Ribbon Mentor Advocate Program, which many of you all are familiar with, then as the Director of Student Equity for Chapel Hill-Carrboro City Schools, and then the co-founder and consultant with a group called the Equity Collaborative. He was first appointed to the House of Representatives North Carolina House in 2013, and then elected in 2014, and then in all subsequent elections. He approaches legislation with an eye towards protecting those who are marginalized, vulnerable, and oppressed. We appreciate that he makes that very public in his website and other information. Representative Meyer, we are glad to have you with us also. So here we all are. We're glad to have you. Now, some of you are in transition. I won't announce your announcements, both what you're doing, what you're not going to be doing, and what some of you are announced that you are seeking additional offices. But let's start with Senator Foushee. Will you take a few minutes, tell us about what's going on with you in your office, and then some of the relevant points, things going on at the General Assembly that you think might be of interest to our group here gathered. Senator Foushee.
So good morning, everyone, and thank you for having us. I think we're all in transition, depending on what happens with the courts. But I do take this opportunity to announce that I will be seeking the congressional seat for CD6, which is currently the district mostly that our great representative, David Price, will be vacating at the end of next year. I am somewhat intimidated, but excited about the opportunity, certainly. As you all know, from that introduction, that I have served in this area for a number of years in several positions, and I look forward to the opportunity to perhaps be more effective. We heard from Congressman Price the way things are right now, but I do believe, as he has indicated, that there's always room for hope, and that those of us who believe that service is one of the most noble things that we can do, we hold out the opportunity and we hold out the hope that we can get it done, that at some point people will realize the purpose of government, that we serve to provide for the health and safety and welfare of our constituents, that if we believe that we are to serve the least of these, then we put principle before philosophy, and that we move in a way that we make people's lives better. So I will say that that is what I believe the three of us have done in the General Assembly for as long as we have been there. Certainly we haven't all been there at the same time, but the three of us have worked towards those efforts. I think that this last session, in my 9 years in the General Assembly, has presented the most opportunity for bipartisan leadership and for bipartisan solutions, given where we are as it relates to the pandemic. And maybe it's because we saw ourselves in the same boat, that the virus was not particular to any person, to any group of people, that it affected us all in the same way. And so we dug in and brought back something that we have pushed away from for too many years, and that's compromise. And understanding that everything should not and nothing should be a zero-sum game. So I'll stop talking there and leave way to my colleagues. But again, I thank you for the opportunity. And I look forward to the discussion.
Well, we are very glad to have you, grateful for your years and years of service, and it's exciting to hear your announcement about the future. We just say to all of us gathered, on occasion, we'll have these events and we'll get feedback afterwards. Some of you will write to us, how come we had no Republicans? And the answer is because no Republicans represent these districts. And we would have to invite somebody from some other district to come and see us. So this is designed to bring forward the people who represent us here locally. And then in this session, we try to keep small p politics, but everybody's running for office and there's lots of new offices. And so we're sorry about that. There's going to be some politic conversation in this as we also talk about policy. Senator, I'll come back to you in just a moment to talk about some of the bigger issues, but let me move on to Representative Insko. Will you share with us what's up with you in your future and some reflections on this past legislative session?
Well, first of all, thanks so much for having us this morning. I think these meetings are really very important to us, and I hope to the community, the business community at large, especially as we work together to improve North Carolina. I have a little different take. I do think that there are some, with redistricting and gerrymandering and some election law bills that are coming through, that there is some threat to democracy, both at the national level and at the state level. I think that compromise, working across the aisle, and recognizing the strengths of a two-party system. I tell my friends that we need, I'm a Democrat, I need Republicans to be the opposition, because both parties make big mistakes. And that's our strength, is having a variety of ideas. And so if either one group or the other takes more authoritarian control, then you lose that dynamic of give and take and compromise. And so I think it's really important for voters to understand that. One thing I would do would be to focus a lot on getting people registered and vote and active in democracy. It's not a given. We only keep democracy if we participate in it. And I think we don't have as many voters regularly participating, and that would be one of my goals as maybe as a retiree. I will not be retiring from activity in the Democratic Party or in politics in general, but just moving on to more community-based efforts. I think I have really enjoyed my 25, almost 26 years in the General Assembly. This is my 13th term, and I've announced that I won't be running again. I'm proud of the contributions I've made. I came in right in just as the Olmstead decision, the Supreme Court Olmstead decision was coming down, saying that it was unconstitutional to keep people in a state institution if they could live in the community with the same amount of money. And that was the impetus for mental health reform in North Carolina, where we were keeping people in our state institutions. We were the 5th highest state in the nation for institutionalizing people in our mental health institutions. And so as a result of that effort, I've spent much of my time in the General Assembly working to improve community-based services for people with mental illness. And we've made a lot of progress. We still have, even after 20 years, we have a long way to go yet. We do need to put more state dollars into that program. And that's part of what Medicaid expansion would do, would be to bring in more federal money that would actually help more people, and veterans, many veterans, uninsured veterans in the state are also fall into that category. We have 10 million people here. We still have about 1 million people who are uninsured. If we were to expand Medicaid, 600,000 of those people would be, and you said not to get into partisan politics, but I think we're all interested in making sure that our veterans and our mentally ill people are covered. And so that I would hope that we would have more bipartisan discussion of that. And I believe that that was part of the speaker's promise this year, was that during the interim, we would have more conversation about that effort going on. So that's been a major part of my work over the past 20 years. I've also had a big focus on early childhood education, and was very privileged to help Jim Hunt get Smart Start off the ground and get that started and pour more money into early childhood education. We found all the data show that if we put money into early childhood education and get people children off into an enriched beginning, that they will learn to read when they go to school, and they will be more likely to graduate from high school and go on post-secondary education. And I know our jobs of the future are really focused on more education. And so I'm proud of the work I've done in that effort, and hope that people will continue working in that too. So then I think I've also, I've done some work in environment, open space, and hunting, actually did some hunting regulations in our unincorporated areas. And then I did the confidence in elections bill with Senator Ellie Kinnaird that actually gave us today's voting regulations that we have today. So I feel like I've been productive, and I will stay active as I move back into being a citizen, a voting citizen, and will be participating in the chamber activities too. So thank you very much for having us this morning.
Well, we're grateful to have you, and grateful for your decades of service to our community. Greig Meyer, let's shift over to you. How are you doing this morning? Any announcements coming from you in your office, and then reflections on what's going on in our General Assembly?
Well, it's I'm always honored to follow Congressman Price and Senator Foushee and Representative Insko. 8 years in office, and I'm still the newbie of this group because of these amazing leaders that we've had. Last weekend at the Hillsborough Holiday Parade, I was in front of Representative Price in the parade, and after our ride went by and I could hear the crowds just raising great cheers and great appreciation for him. And so, you know, this community really understands what government leadership takes and why we need strong government leadership to foster a healthy private sector, whether that be the business part of the private sector, the nonprofits and the arts, or just your personal lives. And so as the times change and with Congressman Price's retirement and Senator Foushee's decision to run for his seat, which I give my full endorsement to Senator Valerie Foushee for Congress. I am also going to seek a new election to try and replace Valerie in a slightly redrawn Senate seat that will include Orange County, Caswell County, and Person County. And I currently represent Orange County outside of Chapel Hill-Carrboro, outside of Representative Insko's district in Caswell County. But I look forward to representing all of Orange County because I feel like I have such deep roots in Chapel Hill, given that's where I spent the first 16 years of my career in education. And we'll be getting to know Person County as the new part of that Senate district, a new part to me. I'm looking forward to going to the Senate because, as most of you know from paying attention to North Carolina politics over the last few years or the last few decades, no matter how long you've been paying attention to it, the Senate is where the big decisions get made in the General Assembly. The House certainly plays its role. I've enjoyed being there very much, but the Senate has the people that throw the big punches and throw their weight around. And even though I anticipate Democrats are most likely going to remain in the minority in both chambers for a while, pending court cases and pending elections, but it's not likely that we'll be able to return to the majority. I do still feel optimistic about the possibility for some good things for North Carolina that will come out of the General Assembly over the next few years. You know, this year, Senator Berger indicated that he was willing to support and thought his caucus was ready to support Medicaid expansion. And just 1 year ago, we would have told you that Senator Berger was the biggest opposition to Medicaid expansion. And so I think it shows you that when pressure is properly applied and applied long enough, things can change even when those in power do not change by position, but they may be able to change their mind over time. And I think that I have developed a reputation for serving the community well and speaking for the voice and the values of our community. But inside the General Assembly, I also have a reputation for being able to kind of work quietly across the aisle with certain people, not all of them, but with certain ones. And the Senate really does that. Senator Foushee has been outstanding at that, of being loud and vociferous for what you believe in when you need to, but being able to sit quietly with people and work together when that's what those you serve need and when you're able to do so. So I hope I'll be able to once again follow in Valerie's footsteps and fill the seat for Senate District 23.
There was a court case. Will you describe what the current status of that primary election is?
Sure. So yesterday, the North Carolina Supreme Court moved the primary election from March 8th to May 17th for all primary elections statewide, and ordered that a trial court in Wake County hold a trial to come to a decision on the redistricting arguments around the state House and Senate and congressional maps by January, I think it's January 15th, but it's in early January, maybe a little bit early. It's January 11th. And then after the trial court is done, that court will go immediately, it says within 48 hours, the decision will be sent to the Supreme Court. So they will skip the Court of Appeals. And that means that likely the Supreme Court plans to have a decision on the redistricting case maybe by the beginning of March. And so we'll have another filing period, maybe new maps, but we will certainly have a primary on May 17th. The Orange County maps seem unlikely to change no matter what the court decides, because they're not being contested in the cases. And the Orange County cluster in both the Senate and House is largely dictated by existing court precedent that probably wasn't broken in this redistricting process. It's not what the arguments are going to be about. So the way that the House and Senate districts here were drawn is probably the way they're going to remain.
Thank you. So we'll all follow along on whether you all have to refile or who will be on the ballot when we get there. Let's talk about what's going on currently. It is a long session, but it seems like every time we have a long session, we complain how long the session is. But you guys are still working. What are the key issues that you're still resolving? The budget is done. Is that correct? What is left? Let's pull the whole panel back. Senator Foushee, what is left to be done? What should we be paying attention to as we finish out this session? Senator?
Well, I think one of the things that is happening, I am on the GovOps committee, and one of the things that is happening now is that I want to be kind. We are taking the opportunity to look at how we appropriated federal funds in light of the pandemic. What I have observed over the last 6 sessions is that there is more attention being given to the administration and whether or not it has led our actions in an appropriate manner, if we have used those funds to the best of our ability, and if we have used them correctly as directed by the federal government. Other than that, I think where we are now is pretty much in a holding pattern, where the majority is determining whether or not it will bring back certain measures that have been vetoed by Governor Cooper for a possibility of overriding those past pieces of legislation. Currently, having finally gotten a budget passed and having completed redistricting, there's not a whole lot going on at this point, particularly as it relates to the Senate. So the reps can give more as to what's happening in their chamber.
Let me ask on that budget issue before we hear sort of comment on what's left. Some big impact on our local community, right? Teacher raises. Mm-hmm. Sometimes companies relocate out of our community. And then sometimes, well, I can only think of one time where the legislature orders them out of our community. So you all voted, not you all, the General Assembly is requiring UNC Central Office to leave Chapel Hill and move to Raleigh. Are there other big changes that we should be looking for that took place in the budget?
I think the big changes, again, have to do with provisions that are not related to appropriations. And certainly they are provisions that somewhat take away some powers from the executive branch, certainly from Governor Cooper or the governor, whoever that is, and from the Attorney General's office. So those were provisions in the budget that we were not successful in negotiating out. But beyond that, the notion that that office, as it relates to the system, should not be in Chapel Hill has been something that has been brewing since I've been in the General Assembly. And I think that those of us who had the opportunity to study to the extent we could, given the time frame, were not aware until it was brought to our attention that, once again, not only was that provision in the budget, but, again, in voting to pass a budget, many of us realized that the greater good was to provide relief for people who had not seen those kinds of raises, that kind of consideration since the budget was passed for the 2018 session. So.
Thank you. So Representative Insko and Meyer, any reflections on or comments that we ought to be paying attention to as a business community that took place in the budget? And then I'll ask you to pivot to the year ahead. What should we be paying attention to or looking forward to on y'all's agenda?
Well, I think I was the only triangle Democrat that voted for the budget. And I did primarily because I thought the education met the standard, and that's a really high priority for me is education and healthcare. But so I also think that I've been working with some of the legislators on the Republican side that are Health and Human Services Appropriations chairs, and have been successful getting some things passed that in the budget that I thought were important. So I was pleased to do that, and know that there's still a lot of work to do. We have still a lot going on that needs to be done. And I think I'm sort of focused on retiring. So
good for you.
I'm turning my attention to what I'm going to be doing next year. So
you deserve an election season where you're not running. Representative Meyer.
Verla is planning a vacation when the rest of us are planning campaigns.
Exactly.
I'm jealous. Aaron, what was the acronym you had for our local economy for education?
We said Ed, Med, and Bed.
Okay.
Ed, Med, and Bed. So that's great. I hadn't heard that before. I probably should have been paying closer attention at other chamber events to pick up on that, but I'm going to use it. I think in this budget, the education piece had some mixed things for Orange County, as you're pointing out, with the system office moving. But then surprisingly, there is a low wealth schools supplemental fund in the budget that actually includes Orange County and Chapel Hill schools in it. It's hard for me to justify why our schools would end up in a low wealth fund, but we'll take the money, right? It's a rare.
They only excluded 3 counties. It's like they called it low wealth, but it seemed it was everybody but Wake, Durham, and Greensboro, and what, Charlotte? Was that it?
Yeah, it was Wake, Mech, Guilford. Yeah, I think maybe they might have excluded Buncombe County, but
they did. Buncombe was not included.
But we get the money.
Yeah,
we're happy to get that money. On the on the med side, besides the lack of Medicaid expansion, which I think everyone in the med community here is universally behind, the other big negative thing that's in the budget is there's a new hospital tax. And I've talked with, and I'm sure my colleagues have talked with the folks at UNC about the imposition of this new hospital tax. It doesn't get phased in until after next year's short session. And I feel like it's a little bit of a bargaining tool for whatever we're going to negotiate on healthcare next year, and maybe around Medicaid expansion, but I haven't figured out how they want to use it that way. But I do think folks, who are involved in the local med sector need to know that we are paying attention to that and how it could impact the hospital system's bottom line. And then on the bedside, on restaurant and lodging, it's probably one of the strongest parts of this budget, because there's a $500 million fund for small businesses that had losses of more than 20% over the last year due to the pandemic. 3/5 of that is reserved, or that 500 million is reserved for the restaurant and lodging industry. Individual businesses can get up to $500,000 in direct cash assistance for rent, payroll, expenses, whatever you need to pay. So that could be very helpful to some of our local businesses that have been hurt over the last year and a half. And then every business, we did finally enact PPP tax deductibility, which is especially helpful to the S Corps out there, and will really help some of our small business owners. So those are, that's a mix of the good and the bad, I think, in the budget. I didn't vote for the budget on education terms because we didn't fully fund the Leander decision, which is the decision that says we need to fully fund all of our schools statewide. And we had the money in the budget to do it. we were sitting on $8 billion in unappropriated cash. We've never been so flush. And instead, the budget includes a massive set of tax cuts phased in over the next decade. And if we're not going to take care of education, I don't know what we're doing. And that's always been North Carolina's bread and butter, and certainly the bread and butter of this community. So that's where I landed on that.
When will those funds? Yes, please.
Could I add something to what Greg just said in terms of how we were able to support, because we were also able to inform how those negotiations went for funding to come to our business communities, particularly small business. I think we started this early in the pandemic when we first started receiving money from the federal government. And we were hearing from all of you, we were hearing from folk in our communities about how important it was to get that assistance, not just so that they could keep doors open, but that they could keep people employed, that we would be able to the extent we could keep our business economy going until we could see what might look like the light at the end of the tunnel. We started this a long time ago. And so when we got to the point where we were talking about passing the biennial budget, we had already informed some of those decisions. We had already established those relationships such that we could be real negotiators in this process along with Governor Cooper. So, I don't want us to lose sight of that, because we talk about hyper partisanism and how we are not working together. But again, I would say to you that all the way from what Congressman Price did when we went to him after hearing from all of you about how the next rollout of funding should be and who should be included and how there should be carve-outs to ensure that those funds were going where we believe they needed to go in our communities. And so when we got to this process, I'm not saying to you that it was easy, but what I am saying is that we put what we may have felt individually aside for the greater good. And I think that what you saw in the document that we were able to vote for was about hearing from and then taking the opportunity to provide for the people whom we serve.
That's fabulous. The PPP forgivability is a big deal, to have to pay income tax on your PPP money statewide when you didn't have to pay it on the federal side. When will the funds that you just described be available? And is it a grant program similar to how they did it in the, do you know?
Actually, I knew that would come up today, and I asked the Restaurant and Lodging Association this morning for the latest that they had from the Department of Revenue, and they do not have an exact timeline yet. They are having a webinar on Friday for their members. So if you're in that industry, you might want to get on the Restaurant and Lodging Association webinar tomorrow, and then they will be releasing details on how to apply for the funds as soon as everything is set up. So let's hope it doesn't take too long.
Excellent. We'll share for the rest of you on this call information about that. If it is like the previous, they've twice before sent grants through the Northland Department of Revenue. The process is not difficult, but it does require you to do a little bit of paperwork and file with the, there's a little bit of things to do to get your business ready to receive it. And so we'll share information about how local businesses can make sure that they are in line for those funds when the time comes. Thank you for sharing those with this group. What questions do our participants have here? You can raise your hand. You can type in the chat.
I saw Scotty's question about broadband. Do you want to
please
talk
go
about
ahead.
that? So broadband is an issue where there has been a lot of bipartisan work over the last couple of years. And again, one of those examples of where, like, for my first 6 years in the legislature, and I think for Valerie and Verla longer, there had not been any real progress on broadband, even though we knew it was an increasing need across North Carolina. And then all of a sudden, when the pandemic hit, the Republicans got very interested in it because it really impacts their districts more than most of the Democrats' districts. And so there's $1 billion for broadband in this budget, as well as the federal money that Congressman Price talked about. We are going to spend a lot of money on broadband over the next 6 years in North Carolina. It probably can't get to some people soon enough. A 6-year timeline is a little bit long if you've been living through the COVID times without access to broadband and you want it as soon as you can get it. But the model that's being used, Scotty asked specifically about allowing municipalities and their local governments to provide broadband. The Republicans have been steadfast against that, and the telecoms are against that. The model is being used as a grant model to telecoms to get them to expand their services. And that is going to come in 3 forms. There's certainly most of the money is going to hardwired fiber to the home. Some of the money is going to Wi-Fi based broadband that will be broadcast from cell phone towers or other vertical assets, as the industry calls them, and some of it going to innovative low altitude satellite broadband. And so we'll have a patchwork of solutions from private providers. The concern there, because it's not going through local governments, it won't be treated as a utility, is of course in the private market. Even if we get everybody broadband, will it be affordable? And it seems like most of those options are going to have the average price of around $100 a month, which is not affordable for many people in rural parts of Orange County or rural parts of North Carolina. And it's not clear whether the legislature is going to take any additional action to help with affordability. If we can get affordability through competition, because maybe you can think about those as really being one that comes underground, one that comes just above the ground, and one that comes through the sky. If we can have 3 levels of competition, we might get prices to come down a little bit, but it's not clear whether that's going to happen, because in most places we're only providing the grants to one of the 3 types of providers. And so it will be dependent for the providers to decide to expand into competitive areas on their own. I'm a little doubtful if that's going to happen. So I feel like the competition is the one area that we're really leaving untouched that we need to work on.
Let me ask you all about another challenge locally that feeds into that ed, med, and bed, and that is workforce development, availability of local workers, and do they have the talent that they need and the training in order to be successful. Luckily, we are served by Durham Tech, and with innovative leadership, make quick pivots. Their back to work initiative, low cost, quick turn credentialing. There's a CTE in our high schools, our universities training folks, but what are we doing at the General Assembly to support workforce development, improving the skills of local workers to connect them with the needs of employers? Anybody like to go with that first? Or is there any advice you have for us about how we can influence or better influence that? Representative Meyer, I saw you were waiting to see if anybody else would unmute, and since you unmuted first, you go first.
I mean, I don't think there's a very innovative or expansive, bold answer to that based on what's in the current budget. But related to the hospitality industry, there is $5 million in the budget for hospitality industry workforce development and $400,000 for a high school career and technical education program to prepare students for hospitality careers. So that was part of the overall rescue package for that industry. Other than that, we got work to do.
We're seeing some states talk about minimum wage and minimum wage increases. Given what's going on in the industry, I really don't know anybody paying minimum wage anymore. Is that a conversation happening in the General Assembly that local businesses should be paying attention to?
There's no move in the General Assembly to raise the state minimum wage at all. I think it's still $7.25, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. Which I do think
what our Republican colleagues will say is they'll say, well, if the businesses are paying more than $7.25, then we don't need to raise the state minimum wage.
So
go ahead, please.
I have a 10 o'clock Zoom coming up. I just wanted to say one more thing that I failed to say before, which is still back about mental health. And that is that the intention of moving people out of our state institutions into the community is that it's actually cheaper. It's less expensive to treat people in the community than it is to keep them in the state institutions. And we now have a state institution inside our prison system. So we by taking money away from our community-based services, we actually put ourselves into a financial deficit situation. So just for the future, if you can support community-based services, that would be great, and Medicaid expansion. But have a good day and thank you so much.
We're grateful for as much time as you were able to give us.
Thank you.
We will be concluding just at 10 o'clock. Let me ask my final question to y'all. If you had a magic wand and a little bit of pixie dust and you were in charge, what maybe one or two things would you change that would make, from your position, that would improve I don't know, the competitiveness of our region?
That's a good question.
I'll give you mine. I would forward fund our community colleges, make sure they don't get the money in arrears, but they would get the money up front and make it more flexible for them to do things. I'd give us more flexibility in regional transit and transportation. I asked myself a question. You're welcome to jump in.
You're talking about local, giving
Yeah, but
the
things that
locals
you
more
could
flexibility.
Yes, right. That we would. What would you do? What do you think that would make our community more successful or more competitive if you were in charge and could make it happen?
And the General Assembly hasn't done anything in the last 10 years on housing or public transportation. And expanding Medicaid would be a huge boost to our local economy. And education is, you know, it drives us. So
But transportation would really move people around.
And universal pre-K.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to think, sometimes like you all order local schools to teach cursive, but then we talk about how we should have more local control. And I just didn't know if there was a thing that you wish that it would change to make things better. So I heard universal pre-K. We got to talk about transportation again. We've got to focus on education. Anything else on your wish lists? Any final questions from the gathered? Stronger coordinated regional advocacy. Thank you, Scotty. Affordable housing from Jennifer Player. Oh, that's what I should have done. I should have asked all of the audience, what do you wish they would do? So take a moment to type that in. Sheriff, do you want to tell us what housing first? Unmute yourself and say hello. Oh, still don't hear you yet.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning.
So, I appreciate all the input that everyone has shared this morning. I think this has been a very invigorating conversation and it's hopefully stirred a lot of people to think outside the box. All the things that we've talked, or a lot of the things that we've talked about, jobs, mental health, sustainability within our communities, depends on housing. And when we look around, especially in our county, it's very difficult to find an answer for that. I think we are a county who wants to be elite, who wants to be first. A lot of people have run their campaigns for many years on affordable housing, yet no one has a definition for it. The numbers of people moving into our community are growing, and we've got to do something about housing for people that just don't have the wherewithal to find a way up. How can you go to work? How can you even think about, being a viable candidate in the employment field if you don't have somewhere to lay down and sleep and think about the things that you've got to deal with? And we also talk about folks that don't have housing who have children, and those children have to go to school and learn. And what would it be like to learn not knowing where you're going to sleep tonight? And this county is very strong, very vibrant, and there are a lot of folks here with a lot of money who like to give their money away. There's got to be something. There's got to be an answer. And if we don't do anything else this cycle, but figure out a way to take care of those folks who have nowhere to sleep, who have nowhere to go to the bathroom, and then we ask how that problem is going to take care of itself. It's not going to take care of itself. It's going to take a commitment of everybody. the whole of government to make a difference. And I think that our mental health issues, our job issues, a lot of the issues we have with learning would take care of themselves overnight if you had somewhere to sleep, you had somewhere to go to the bathroom, you had somewhere to sit down with your children and talk about the things that have affected them all day long.
Sheriff, we are grateful that you joined us and you put that comment into the chat and if you're willing to share it with us. I saw a comment from Jennifer Player. Jennifer is the extraordinary CEO of our Habitat chapter here locally. She's also has chaired for the last year the Big Bold Ideas Committee on Affordable Housing that has a comprehensive set of recommendations that they're beginning to share around for feedback. Sheriff, I think you'll be real pleased with a comprehensive approach, doing things differently, right? We can't just do it the way that we have. And we appreciate you saying your comment. Representative Meyer, Representative Insko, Senator Foushee, incredibly grateful for your leadership. Good luck. Representative Insko, with your retirement, and the two of you on your upcoming election. Congressman Price, so grateful for the service that you have provided for us. Katie Lewis, let me bounce back to you for some concluding comments.
Thanks, Aaron. Well, that was terrific. I hope everyone here today really was able to learn something new that'll be useful for their business. I want to give a heartfelt thank you to our special guest speakers, U.S. Representative Price, North Carolina Senator Foushee, North Carolina Representatives Insko and Meyer. I also want to thank today's sponsors again. So Servpro of South Durham and Orange County, Duke Energy, Durham Tech, and Chapel Hill Media Group. And I want to thank our Chamber's Government Affairs Committee. They've curated this entire series, and we are so grateful to their service. As I mentioned at the start of the meeting, we'll send you a video link for today's discussion in the next few days. We post that on our YouTube channel. And we're also going to be launching the details on our 2022 Critical Issues series. So get excited for that. Again, if you want to learn more and join our chamber, just give me a call or an email or go to carolinachamber.org. And in the meantime, remember to buy local this holiday season. And I wish you all a happy holidays. With that, we are adjourned.